that up and just need to make sure everyone can hear me okay. So if you're in the comments and you can actually hear me and just need to make sure everyone can let me know. I'm going to be reading Quran. Something that I haven't done in a long time. Just go through the book and see what happens. Okay, so just let me know if the sound is okay, if everyone can hear me. Can you hear me okay? Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Sound is good. Hear me okay? So if you're in the comments, okay, looks like we're good. Alrighty, so we will begin. And welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me for this unexpected live stream. I wanted to try something different, which is reading the Quran and reading it live and going through some commentary and see what we come up with. Hi everyone. Okay, so let us begin. First chapter of the Quran, which is Surah Fatiha. Let's begin with that. So Surah Fatiha is the opener. It's known as the opener of the Quran. It's not the first chapter to be revealed, but it is the first one chronologically in the book. Now, why is it put at the beginning of the book? Well, supposedly, Angel Gabriel told Muhammad to put it in that order. What actually happened is Muhammad probably spoke to his companions, and they decided that this is how it's going to be after he died, because, of course, Muhammad wasn't alive when they put the Quran together, right? So the Quran that we have today, the Uthmani, which is also known as the standard Cairo text, 1924 Cairo text that we have today, that is the one that is in the order that we have to trust the companions. The companions put it in this order. Hello Habib. Hello everyone else. Vidat, Aya, Ibrahim, Bij. Hi everyone. And what is the message of this surah? The message of this surah is to praise God, who is apparently not just merciful. He's not just Rahman, but he's Rahim. He has two types of mercy. And then he's the sovereign of Day of Judgment. So he's the one in charge of the Day of Judgment. He's the one that you only worship and ask for help. So right there, you have some dilemma already. Some of the Muslims in the Ummah don't just do this. For example, the sect that I was born in, the Ismailis sect, they actually ask Ali for help. When you say Ya Ali Madet, which is a greeting of Ismailis all over the world, what does it mean? It means may Ali help you, right? So interestingly, already you have some, and then you also have some Sufi Muslims as well, who ask saints for intercession, right? Will I be actually reading it with proper Qira'at? I could read it. I don't know how good my Qira'at is. Let's try. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. Okay, إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Actually, I wasn't Shia. I was born as an Ismaili, which are technically Shia, but they're so far removed from Shiism that they're not even considered Shia by some. But yeah, it's I grew up as an Ismaili, so not a Shia. Shia Muslims are the type of Muslims that when you see them and you see like Sunni Muslims, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the difference just right off the bat. But Ismailis is you could tell the difference because they don't read the Quran, they don't pray like the namaz. The Ismailis are totally different, right? In that sense, from Sunnis, from the religious practice point of view. I would still say that Ismailis are Muslims. I'm not saying they're not Muslims, but the religious practice is very different. It's a very, very different meaning, right? So I hope you loved my beautiful recitation of the Quran, which I still somehow remember after so many years. Um, but yeah, so then here we go. We're at the point where we're telling God to ask us. We're telling God, we're speaking to the Creator and saying, only you we worship and ask for help. Now, does God talk back to human beings? Does God answer? Some people would say, yes, God does answer our du'as. I would argue, no. And the question is, if God answers our prayers, does he answer the prayer of all people or only Muslims? If he answers the prayers of all people, does he answer by any name? So if I say, oh Jesus, in your name, heal me, heal my wounds, make me better, is Allah going to respond to someone who says, oh Jesus? Well, according to the Quran, we're not supposed to do that. We're only supposed to ask Allah for help. But what if they think that is Allah? What if that's the God? Or Ram, or Krishna, or whatever, right? The Father, God the Father. Now, if that's the case, then do we find that Muslim du'as are answered and nobody else's? Why is it that everybody thinks the du'as are answered and and nobody actually's du'as prayers are actually answered? It's actually nobody's prayers are answered, not only Muslims, but basically nobody's, right? And why do I say that? I say that because we don't have any evidence that dua actually does anything. So how can we know whether prayer actually works? Is it something we just do to make ourselves feel better? If somebody prays, there should be an actual result of the prayer. So one of the best things that humanity has come up with is the scientific method. The reason why a scientific method is amazing is because it tries its very best to come to a true conclusion without bias. And how does it do that? Excuse me. What it does is there's a control group and then there's the actual experiment. So if you're giving a pill, you give two pills. One is a placebo pill and one has the actual drug in it when you're doing a drug test. So that way you know whether the taking of the pill, which can have an effect on a human being, like sometimes you tell people you're giving them something, it'll actually make them feel better, right? Because they think that they did something, even if it has no effect. That's called the placebo effect, right? So now, if we are actually talking to God and we actually want a response, we need to test this somehow. How can we test this? Well, we should look at societies as a whole. We can look at societies such as, we can look at whole countries. We can see, is there any measurable effect? Can we see that Muslim countries are doing better in any way? Because if they have Allah on their side, they should be able to do better, right? There should be some measurable effect. You have thousands of Muslims every day, they're praying for Palestine to be liberated, they're praying for Allah's victory, they're praying for this and that. It's like, if they actually had an effect, wouldn't we be able to see something? Wouldn't it be able to be measure that in any ways? Now, of course, God's not going to come down when you conclude your test by saying, okay, here you go, I'm going to give you the answer you wanted when you made a prayer. But if it is true, if Jesus or Allah or anybody actually answers a prayer, shouldn't we be able to measure that in some way, or at least recognize or see that? But we don't see that. We don't see any sort of effect, which means that prayer doesn't seem to do anything. Like, you could talk to your plants and have the same effect, unfortunately. So if there's something that's happening to you in life and you're troubled and you need someone to talk to, it would be better to talk to an actual person, right? A counselor, a friend, maybe one of your parents. But to actually just talk to God, I mean, you could talk to God if it makes you feel better, but there's no evidence that there is anybody out there that's hearing us, that's responding to us, that's doing anything, right? And then, in the Quran, then it says, guide us to the straight path. The straight path, I guess that means what Muhammad came with. that is the so-called straight path. So it's interesting how it's branding, and it's actually pretty good branding when you say that my path is the straight path, mine is the best, mine is the balanced way. I mean, that's actually a good way to brand yourself, right? Because if you, when you do that, you're automatically saying, well, the other paths are not as good as my path. So it's actually good branding, right? Um, ZZ 2009 is saying the Quran is miraculous that it has convinced millions of people it is true. Is there any other book that has convinced millions of people? Ask yourself that question. Is there any other book that has convinced millions of people other than the Quran? And if so, is it also equally true? Good question, right? The problem with that argument is it's an appeal to popularity. It's actually a fallacy because you can actually convince people of anything. It doesn't make it right or wrong. You might trick them. They might be deluded. They might be misguided. They might not be on the straight path, so to speak, right? Not believing in God is the fool's only, Solomon Ants. So Solomon Ants, you can believe in God if you wish to believe in God. Or you can disbelieve in God if you wish to disbelieve in God. But the most important question that we are discussing today is the holy books that we claim to be from God actually from God? Not whether God exists, like whatever you mean by God, but are these holy books true? Right? That's the question. That's what we want to find out. Someone's saying, I've seen Jesus answering prayers. For example, people after praying to Jesus have been healed of HIV AIDS. I don't know how that could be that someone was healed of HIV AIDS by praying to Jesus. Can we be sure that they were healed because of the prayer? Sometimes diseases go into remission and they just stop being active, right? And then it comes back after many years. For example, it was in the news not too long ago that yeah. So I have this article here that I just want to share. Right, that there was this vegan YouTube star who said that she'd actually got cured of her cancer, and then she died, sadly, right? So it's unfortunate because sometimes people think that the prayer and the religious things of actually making people better, but it doesn't always actually do anything, right? And you might think that you're better, but if you didn't go to a doctor, if you didn't treat the underlying physical symptoms, the physical symptoms. And the other thing I would like to ask, right? This is something to think about as well. It's an interesting website. Why won't God heal amputees? How is it that we don't pray for God to heal amputees? We'll pray for things that we think can be healed, like HIV, AIDS, cancer, things that are like not quite clear to us. But like when it comes to someone missing like an arm or a leg, well, theoretically, that should be just as effective. It should be just as easy to pray for that, and that should come back. But that's not what we find, right? We don't find that this actually has any effect. If it did, why is it that can't get like arms, legs, limbs back? People sometimes think that the prayer is actually doing something, but unless we can, like, there's no way to actually prove that was the case, right? Like, what if you didn't pray and you still got better? Like that's just as equally possible, right? That you don't do anything at all, and people do get kind of better, right? And someone's Vidat is asking a question that why doesn't Jesus just stop the HIV forever? Which is a good point. It's a problem of evil, theodicy, right? Like the problem of evil is something that is a major challenge for theists, because it's just difficult to reconcile like all of the things that seem so unnecessary, right? Like the HIV virus, it just doesn't make sense that something like that, like God would create something like that, or like, like any disease you want to talk about, like, I mean, like polio. Why would God create that, right? It doesn't seem intentional by any means, right? And the last part of our atheist tafsir, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed favor, not of those who have evoked anger or those who have astray. Okay, so here we go. The path of those upon you have bestowed favor. So some people say that this means Muslims, not of those who have evoked your anger. In Ibn Kathir, it says this is the Jews, and those who are astray, it says that those are the Christians. So somehow they made this talk about Christians and Jews. I don't know if that's actually what it means, but that's one way to interpret it. So this is something that Muslims read, and I used to read 17 times a day, every single day, over and over and over again. Did it actually help me in my life in any way? I don't actually think so. I don't think that the Islamic praying 5 times a day, did anything for me, right? Like, yes, it made me feel better that I did my Islamic duty to God, but does it actually help in any ways? Well, it's good to memorize Quran, as I was just speaking with someone, and he mentioned that when you read something over and over again, it helps you to memorize it. So could it be that the reason why the Quran is the namaz or the salah is made like this is in order to memorize the Quran, like Muhammad's words, right? And it's a system. It's a system that promotes itself and preserves itself. It's a self-preserving, self-replicating, self-preserving system. By setting up a system where you pray 5 times a day, and you are reading this book over and over again, and you're encouraging people to memorize it, this will actually end up with people like memorizing the book, right? Like, is the Quran a miracle because people memorize it? No, because this is exactly what you expect from a system like this, right? Now, this does seem to be unique to Islam. This idea of like memorizing this book, it's a big emphasis on oral tradition over like a written culture, right? So in Muhammad's time, this was how they would pass along poetry. They would memorize poems and they would repeat it over and over again. But when it comes to poetry, it doesn't actually matter whether it's like exactly the same or not. It doesn't matter whether the word ordering changes. It could affect the poem, but there's no life and death. There's no heaven and hell. There's no real issue with it being incorrect. But with Islam, with the Quran, if it's the last and final word of God, you need it to be exactly right. You can't forget it. You can't lose it. So this system was created, right? But it's obviously not a good system, because without a written document, things can change, right? The hadith is a good example of this, even more than the Quran. With the Quran, Uthman nipped it in the bud and destroyed all of the other evidence, the other copies, the other manuscripts. Everything was destroyed except for Uthman's copy. And what was left is just the one copy, the Uthmani version that was spread throughout the years, which is the one we have today. Now, of course, Uthman actually missed some of the things, right? Like he didn't manage to destroy everything. So we managed to find some of that stuff, right? We managed to find that one of the examples of what we found is a Sanaa palmum set. It's called a palmum set because a palmum set means that it has multiple layers. So it was originally used for something else, and then it was wiped out, and then something else was written below it. So there was 2 layers of text, and I actually have a video about this exact topic, about the Sanaa manuscript. So do check out the video if you have a chance. Hold on, just show you where it is. Okay, where is my video? Alright, here it is. The Sanaa manuscript. What the Sanaa manuscript tells us about today's Quran and the seven Qira'at. So this is actually a very interesting video where I talk about the evidence for this, what we find in the actual Quran. There's multiple. This copy that was found in the mosque in Yemen shows us something that we didn't know existed and something that they tried to destroy, which we now, with the technology, with UV radiation, managed to read under the actual ink. So we managed to read the ink below the ink, which is amazing. And like, it's only technology that helps us to see that there was another copy that people were using. And this was found inside a mosque. So we're not just talking about, we're talking about something that was stored inside a mosque that was actually in use, that Uthman tried to destroy. But obviously, some people, instead of burning the book, what did they do? They erased it. Because the paper, or like the type of parchment that they were using, was expensive, right? It was expensive to use. It was expensive to make, I mean. So instead of actually wiping it out, instead of burning it, they wiped it out, right? And you can actually, with ultraviolet radiation, see the text below the text, and actually, and there's quite significant differences, right? We're talking about examples where the meaning changes, and this is from an academic paper called Sanaa and the Origins of the Quran, right, by Benham Sadeghi and Mosam Godazi. And I've go through some of the differences in this video. So back to the Quran. Somebody is saying Islam is a danger to humanity. I do think that every system that you believe in, every system has, like, any dogma that you believe in is going to shift the choices that you make in life, right? Excuse me. It's going to shift it towards some other things that you may not have decided or chose upon. For example, if you believe that there's a next life, a hereafter, then of course you're going to make decisions a little bit differently. If you believe that God is this entity that is watching you, is going to do some certain things to you if you do this or don't do that, you're going to change your life. You're going to do things differently, instead of, like, for example, maybe taking a job at a bank. Like in my case, I had a job I could have taken at the bank, and I didn't take up any bank job because, well, riba is cursed by Allah. So I don't want to be, like, in trouble with Allah. So I decided not to take bank jobs, right? And yeah, do check out my video on the Sanaa manuscript after this video is over, for more details. Okay, so going back to the Quran. Let's go to the end. So these are all the short surahs that most Muslims have memorized. At least these ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are the surahs that was revealed in Mecca. So there's a big difference between Mecca, the Meccan verses, the Meccan surahs, and the Medinan surahs. The Meccan surahs are the surahs that are usually shorter. Usually like, more about, like, being a good person and hellfire and heaven, and they're not as much about law or stuff like that. Ahsan is asking me, where's my family from? My family is actually from long back from India, but I was born in Kenya. My parents are from Kenya. My grandparents are from Kenya, but I'm actually like Indian heritage, you can say. So these short surahs, maybe starting from this one, even if you let's go to Al Kauthar. This is a very short surah that's only 3 ayat, or 4 if you count the Bismillah. So some people count Bismillah as one of the verses of the Quran. Some people don't count it. With the standard count that we have today in the 1924 Cairo edition, there's 6,236 verses in the Quran. But apparently, as I found out recently, Ahmadiyas count the Bismillah as part of the verse. So all of the numbering is different, which is quite confusing from all the other Muslims. So this is an interesting surah. It's a very short surah. The background of Surah Kauthar is that people were saying to Muhammad, this is what I was taught. People were saying to Muhammad that you are cut off. You are cut off because you have no male progeny. So in that culture, it was a big thing that people wanted to have male children. They wanted the family to continue through the because it's a patriarchy, so patrilineal culture where lineage continues to the men, not to the women. So obviously it's arbitrary, but in this culture, it was to the males. Now, this example is a response to the kuffar who were saying, "Oh, you're going to be cut off, right?" So this surah is actually responding to that by saying, "No, you are the one who is going to be cut off, not me. Muhammad, I'm not cut off. You guys are cut off. I'm gonna get Al Kauthar." So what is Al Kauthar? Al Kauthar, the surah says, we granted you Al Kauthar, right? Al Kauthar can be interpreted in many different ways, right? Some people translate it as abundance. Some people translate it as literally Al Kauthar, which is a river in paradise, right? So if you go to a different website, which another website that I like is called Quran X, and on Quran X we have tafsir, which is pretty cool, right? And it links to in the tafsir you can find actually, and even sometimes there's even directly hadith. There's a hadith button, and you can actually see hadith as well. So basically, Kauthar is a river. It's a river in paradise that Muhammad is going to be scooping out water and giving to people before the day of judgment. So everything in Islam is all about not everything in Islam, but many things in Islam are it's basically to scare people, right? And to make people believe in Muhammad and obey Muhammad, right? So in one of the hadith, this one is in Jamia Tirmidhi, it says that Al Kauthar is a river that Allah gave me in paradise, whiter than milk and sweeter than honey. In it are birds whose necks are like the necks of camels. Indeed, this is plump and luxurious then. Omar added that. It's like, yeah, that's some good birds. It must be like a delicious type of chicken, I guess. I don't know. Maybe he was thinking about eating them. Oh yeah, and Muhammad said, yeah, those who consume it are more plump than it. So they're saying, so Muhammad was like, I have this river. It's a beautiful river in paradise. It's whiter than milk and sweeter than honey. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds a little bit disgusting. Like sweeter than honey? Like by Allah, honey is already too sweet. Do I really want something sweeter than honey? Now my wife is sweeter than honey, so she's the exception. But other than that, I don't think I like anything sweeter than honey. So yeah, this hadith is sourced from Jami at-Tirmidhi. It's considered Sahih, but this is not the only one, right? This is there's other ones you can find as well. For example, this one in Abu Dawood, Albani considered it authentic, and he said that when Prophet was lifted to heavens, a river whose banks were transparent or hollowed pearls was presented to him, and then he got some musk or something, and he said, "This is Al Kauthar, which Allah gave you." I just want to mention in the chat, I'm seeing some like kind of rude comments about Muhammad, and I want to say this is not my style. This is not my way. So please don't do that. I don't think that we should be spitting out profanities, and it's not going to help. It's not going to help my mission or my goals. It's not going to help any of us. If our goal is to help people to see like some of the mistakes in religion, then not gonna do that. We're not gonna achieve that by, saying "peace be upon him" and stuff like that. Like, come on, like, please grow up. And let's talk about this maturely and with respect. I mean, I am making fun at the same time, but I'm not being like profane. Okay, like when I said, sweeter than honey, and someone was saying that Ibrahim said, I think it's because they weren't used to sweet food. Yeah, that's a good part. That's a good theory. Like, maybe it was like, they're not used to sweets, and this was like a luxury for them. Now we have, I don't know, too much sweets, and we're all getting fat. What do I think about near-death experiences? Axel something Wissen is asking. I think near-death experiences haven't proven anything like supernatural. People see things when the brain is dying. It's like when you start to cut off the oxygen and the blood supply to your brain, the brain starts, I think, hallucinating. There's some common things they see, like tunnels. So, like, the eyesight starts to go away near the edges of the display. And they see like tunnels, and they sometimes will see the life flash before their eyes. I don't actually think it proves anything, to be honest. I don't think it actually proves that there's any sort of afterlife, because let's say there was an afterlife. Does that mean that those people saw the afterlife in near-death experiences? No. Maybe, like, even if there is an afterlife, even if there is some reincarnation or something, it might still be that the brains are hallucinating and seeing something. Like, it doesn't prove anything, right? So I don't really feel like it proves anything, I guess. Takia Watch, thank you for your kind comments that I'm a role model. I hope I can continue doing this and, helping people and helping myself too. This is fun. Having a good time here. Talking about the Quran. Ex-Muslims can't get over Islam. All they want to do is talk about it. Well, I do think in this case, maybe they're right. But they're not actually right, because most people don't talk about it. And I have a specific purpose. I'm an activist, so I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to have guests on my show. I'm happy to discuss these topics because this is what I want to do, and I enjoy it. And even as an atheist, like, I'm not limiting myself only to one religion. I do speak about other religions. For example, I was just on Sham Sharma's show. It's going to be going live on Sunday. So we were talking about different things, not just Islam. We did talk about Hinduism as well, and Buddhism, and spirituality, meditation, mindfulness. So yeah, I enjoy these topics, and this is fun for me. Feel free to ask any questions while we're going. This is just a fun live chat. I'm just doing this as an experiment to see how it goes. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions. Yeah. Edward is saying the brain is desperately trying to repair itself. Use what little resources it has. It's just random noise. Yeah, that's what I think too. I think that near-death experiences are literally like near deaths. Like, this is what happens when you're dying, right? So the same way that some people get high when they're starved of oxygen, right? It's the same type of idea. Yeah. So, I'm just gonna remove one of the translations because it's kind of confusing. So here we go. So Allah said He gave Muhammad Al Kauthar. So Muhammad gave himself Al Kauthar to make himself feel better, and then He said, "So pray to your Lord and sacrifice to Him." So this is meant like sacrifice animals to Him, and also just in general sacrifice to Him. And lastly, it says, no, it's your enemy that's cut off. So one of my friends who was a Muslim told me that, well, the Quran doesn't take into account Muhammad's temperament. The Quran has a neutral tone. But does it look like it has a neutral tone to you? Does it look like God would get involved in these petty squabbles? Like, oh, you're cut off, you have no male kids. So they were being nasty to Muhammad, right? And then in response, God says, no, you're cut off. You guys, you are cut off, not Muhammad. Muhammad, he's got Al Kauthar. What do you guys have? You guys got nothing. You just have Nothing. So, I mean, it's kind of silly, but they used to really put a big emphasis on this whole thing about lineage. Um, they had like they used to know the ancestry to go back. Like they used to have the memorized ancestry going back several generations. Right? When somebody says bin, like bin Laden, that actually means the son of Laden. Right? So it's just like it's the names they keep going back and back, right? So they used to have these long chains where they used to be proud that I'm Qurayshi or I'm this or I'm that, and now even in the Desi community, you have a lot of people with these names like Qurayshi. You have names like Sayyid, and they are claiming to have like Arab ancestry now, right? Which I don't know how true it is. A lot of people are claiming to be Sayyid, which means that they go back to the time of Muhammad. Why didn't Allah give Muhammad any son? This is an interesting question. Well, it's a very interesting question. How is it that Muhammad only had kids from Khadijah and none of his other wives? Like, it's a very good question. How is it with so many wives who had kids, none of them were like he wasn't having kids with any of them? And then I mean, he there's a story that he had Ibrahim with Maria, and then the baby died, right? The baby Ibrahim died, and that's when there's an incident behind that. But it doesn't add up. There's something fishy. There's something really fishy about the story of Muhammad and the details of Muhammad's life. How is it that there's no, like how does that work? I'm not sure actually. I don't understand why Muhammad didn't have any kids other than with Khadijah. So with Khadijah, he had Fatima, he had Ruqayya, he had Kulthum. I don't know if he had any other kids, at least three, like three daughters. I don't know why he had only daughters and not sons. I don't know why that is. No idea. No idea. But yeah, good question. Good question. Someone said he had a low sperm count. I don't know. So either that or maybe a lot of the details about his life are just made up and they just don't add up because this is like a red flag. Like so many years of having sex and no kids, like it's weird, very strange. They didn't have contraceptives back then, right? So unless they hid the births or they died or something like that, and we just don't know the details. But I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, going back to this, indeed, your enemy is the one that's cut off. Like, does this seem like something a god would write? It's almost like a godly rap battle. You insult my prophet, I insult you back, right? Let's go to the next verse. So that's Surah Kauthar. Surah Kafirun. Um, this one's kind of famous. People know this one because oh disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship. Sometimes people when you try to talk to them about Islam, they quote you this Surah Kafirun. They're like, I don't worship what you worship, and I won't. You can worship what I worship, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I don't want to worship what you like. What's going on here? We're just having a dialogue about whether Islam is true, and I don't worship what you worship. You don't worship as what I worship. Like it makes more sense. It makes more sense in the context of like ancient Arabia, where they had different gods and tribal gods, and oh, I'm not gonna worship your gods. You don't want to worship my god. The tafsir behind this as well is given that they gave him an offer. Again, I don't know if this is true, like this really happened, but apparently it was like, I'm not going to, I'm not gonna worship your gods on one day and you worship my Allah on the other day. That's the deal they made with him, right? Which is kind of funny. If that really happened, I don't know. It seems like a silly deal to make. But anyways, yeah. So then this was a response to that. Very contextual to the time and place. But people like this surah. They use it a lot to tell people, oh, I'm not gonna worship what you worship. You kafirun, leave me alone. I'm just gonna worship what I want to worship. And it goes on and on about the same thing. It's just like repeating itself over and 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 over. For you is your religion, and for me is my religion. This is a really good ayah. Lakum dinukum waliya deen. If only it was true. For you is your religion, and to me is my religion. I wish that Muslims would actually implement it. This is actually a very good principle that, like, you know, I will live my life according to the way I want to, and you live the life according to the way you want to. This is almost like, you could say, like secularism. You follow whatever religion. If you don't want to eat pork, you don't want to drink alcohol, by all means, you can. You don't want to eat meat, go ahead. But then when you want to tell me I can't do this and I can't do that, well, then we have a problem, right? Because your rights end where my rights begin, right? And of course, some of these are ethical challenges that we have to discuss as a society. For example, weed is now halal in Canada. It's now legalized. So they decided that there's no benefit in having this, to be illegal. That this drug is I wouldn't say harmless, but it's not worth putting people in jail over. And we shouldn't jail people over that. So let's legalize it. So now, because for the longest time, people were saying, well, alcohol is more dangerous than marijuana, but why is alcohol legalized and not marijuana? So there's not actually a good answer for that, right? Because they're both drugs, and actually, like, in many ways, alcohol is more dangerous, yet it's legal, right? So as a society, we decided that now we're going to make alcohol, not just alcohol, but also weed legal. So in Canada, weed is legal now, right? So you can't get arrested for owning up to 30 grams of weed. So there obviously is going to be some discussion back and forth, but the thing I like about secularism is you have the system where people are free to worship, right? You're free to worship and free to do what you want to do as a Muslim, as a Christian, as whatever religion you follow, Jew, Hindu. You're most welcome. If you want to, even not religion, just cosplay. If you want to dress up as Sailor Moon, or if you want to be like Kermit the Frog or Daffy Duck or whatever, like, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't affect you, right? What goes on in the bedroom is, everyone's own private affairs. It doesn't matter. It's like, it's a beautiful way to live. It's tolerance, right? It's mutual respect and tolerance for each other. It's saying that you are free to live the way you want to, and I'll live the way I want to, right? I mean, that's how it should be, and we can discuss, things in between, as on an as needs basis. Alrighty, so we are down Surah Kafirun, Surah Kauthar. Now, this one. Okay, so this one's interesting. Surah An Nasr, right? إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ. When the victory of Allah has come and the conquest. So this is one of the last surahs to be revealed. This surah happened is because of the victory of Mecca, right? So they considered this like the final victory. Now, imagine you lived in a time and place where there's all different gods everywhere, and then this guy comes up and says, only this one God should be worshipped, no other gods. And it wasn't just in Islam. Like, even the ancient Israelites, they saw Jehovah as a god of war. And this God wanted exclusive worship, no other God, and he's a God that will make you victorious, right? If you worship him. So this is the same thing that we're seeing in Islam as well, that this is a God that is actually intervening, that they used to believe in Allah back then. They used to believe in Allah, but they also used to believe in other gods, right? Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, Al-Manat are some examples, right? Hubal. And Muhammad said, no, we only worship Allah, not the other gods. And I'm his prophet, and he only talked to me. So I'm the only one that can tell you guys what he said, so you have to go through me. And he loves me, I'm the best guy, I'm the best example, and whoever loves Allah will follow me, and so on and so on and so on. But those other gods are made up. My God is ill. But his God was the God of all the other gods. So the same idea that you have in Roman mythology and Greek mythology of Jupiter or Zeus, the high god. Some people say Allah was the moon god. I don't I don't see evidence for this. Like I haven't studied this in great detail, but I don't think this is a good argument. I don't think that's what Allah is. Allah is not a moon god. Allah is the high god of the ancient Arabs, the same way that Jupiter or Zeus is a high god. So the god of the gods, right? So there's like lesser gods and greater gods. And they used to believe that the lesser gods, um, I just saw a funny comment, but I'll finish my thought. The lesser gods used to be like more approachable, right? So if you needed to talk to lesser god is there, and greater god is harder to reach because he's more abstract, he's more unknowable, he's more distant, he's more high, the most high god, whatever. So we have these lesser gods, right? And so that's how they used to see the world, right? And I think it's quite natural that humanity goes from, multiple gods to one god. It's like the natural progression of like humanity, right? That's how our thinking to no god, right? That's the ultimate, right? You go from multiple gods to one god to there is no god, right? See my finger? There is no spoon, right? It's like one of those things. Again, I'm not saying there is necessarily no god, but I'm saying God did not send any revelation to humanity. That's what I believe. Um, Someone is discussing about virgins being raisins, and someone saying who would even want. Where's the comment? It's disappeared here about more than two raisins. More than. Oh yeah, ha ha ha. Gerard Perry. Who wants more than two raisins to begin with? The gross. That's funny because some people say that hur al ain, means raisins, which is a pretty funny analogy because I don't think that's what the men of Arabia were dreaming about, raisins. um, and just to finish my point, okay. So yeah, so humanity's gone to went from polytheism to monotheism, which is it's happened right multiple times, not just for Arabia but also for the Israelites, right? Like Judaism, right? They went from polytheism to monotheism. Karen Armstrong, The History of God, she goes over this. It's a good book. It's a bit of a dry book, but it's a good book. Some people say Yasin, Taha, these are the names of Muhammad. I don't know if there's any evidence for this. Someone's saying Allat is a moon god, but there's some things about the word Allah that it's not feminine, it can't become plural, and stuff like that. So I think I kind of do think that it just means just God, the God. Let me see if I can find this. There's a very nice post that I like, that discusses the ancient gods of Arabia and how Allah was basically the high god, um, of ancient Arabia. Hold on. I always have a hard time finding this because it's not high on Wikipedia. Can't find it. Okay, I'll find it later. So someone is saying, please talk a little about the Sabians. Now, the Sabians are like basically a dead religion, right? Um, Hold on, I actually found the link I was looking for. Ooh, found it. Okay, I found the link I'm looking for. I just want to share that before I get into this topic. Okay, let me just post that in the chat as well, so everybody has it. Here you go. Okay, so this link, Arab Paganism, talks about the history of ancient gods and the different gods that existed and how Allah was the high god of all of these gods. So this is a pretty cool write-up, right? Manaf, Manat, Ara, Quzza, Like it's pretty comprehensive, right? And then Allah is in there as well, right? And it says here, um, Allah was one of the three chief goddesses of Mecca and one of the three daughters of the high God Allah. So I think this is closer to the truth, that this was what they used to believe in, this high God. And actually the Quran itself says, if you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they will say Allah. So this shows that they believed in Allah as a God as well as these other gods. So to give more credence to this theory, right? Excuse me. So Sapiens is a dead religion that people used to believe in, that used to exist, but no longer exists in the world today. And this is something many people are confused about, including me as a Muslim. I used to be confused about this. It's like, indeed, those who believed and those who were Christians or Jews or Sabians and will believe in Allah, blah blah blah, will have their word with the Lord, and there'll be no fear. So a lot of people wonder what's Sabians. Like, I've heard of Jews and Christians. Now, according to Muhammad's context, these were all important religions. All of Judaism, I'm sorry, Jews, Christians, Sabians. But today, we are scratching our heads and saying, Sabians? What's Sabians? Sabians is a religion that no longer exists for the most part. It's somewhere in the world you will find people called Sabians, but it's just it's one of those things that no longer exists, right? And so Muhammad put it in the Quran because he thought it was important, but it's no longer anything. It's not even a point of reference for most people that live in the world today, right? So that's Sabians for you. Okay, so going back, um, I just finished this topic before I get to the questions. It says, when the victory of Allah comes and the conquest, you see people entering the religion of Allah in multitudes. So what happened was, when Muhammad conquered Arabia, and to his credit, he did it peacefully, in the sense that it seems like he may have broken the treaty of not fighting, and then he took over Mecca without killing basically almost anybody, which is to his credit was amazing. Instead of like slaughtering people left, right, and center, he did say there was a couple of people that had to be killed, no matter what, and some of those people were named, right, by name. These people have to be killed, including, was it the son of Abu Jahl, Ikramah ibn Abi Jahl, the son of Abu Jahl, one of his enemies, was one of the people that was named to be killed. And Ikramah actually ran away because he heard that Muhammad said, if you find him, kill him, even if he's hanging on to the cloth of the Kaaba. So Muhammad said, even if these guys are clinging to the cloth of the Kaaba, kill them. Right? There's a couple of people like that. But he did forgive, according to the story, Hind. Hind was the one who chewed the liver of his uncle, Hamza. Hamza was killed in battle by Hind. Hind paid money to have him killed in the battle, and she chewed his liver and spit it out. So despite that, she was the wife of Abu Sufyan, one of the previous leaders of Mecca. And so, he actually forgave her or let it go, right? He didn't kill her or take any sort of revenge. But he also said something to the effect of, get out of my sight, I don't want to see you ever again, or something like that. So he didn't like her. But, again, to his credit, this was one thing that he did. He actually let it go. But Ikramah was one of the ones who was supposed to be killed at the Battle of Mecca after the victory. And so a lot of people started converting to Islam because they're like, hey, I got to join the winning team. The way they saw it was Mecca, which was run by the polytheists, is now run by Muhammad. So we got to get on Muhammad's side now. Now, did they actually really believe in Muhammad? Did they really truly believe he was the actual prophet? Maybe. But the fact is, as soon as Muhammad died, there was widespread apostasy all over Arabia, right? And they had to have what's called the Ridda wars in order to bring the people back to Islam. So people were apostating left, right, and center. People were saying, the tribes were saying, I'm not going to pay the zakat, right? The zakat is 2.5% of a wealth, of excess wealth over a certain amount that's taken. It's not just 2.5%, but it's actually based on the number of camels and sheep you have and whatever. So this is taken and sent back and given to, it's used for certain causes. So some people are like, I'm not paying zakat anymore, right? Certain tribes. So Abu Bakr said, I'm going to fight whoever doesn't pay the zakat. I'm going to fight you like you're a disbeliever. right? Just even if you pray or you don't pray, I don't care. Even if you say Muhammad's a prophet, if you don't pay the zakat, I'm going to fight you. So they had these ridda wars, the wars of apostasy, in order to bring back all of these people back to Islam, back to under the control of, back to bring these people back under the control of the Muslim leadership, or Abu Bakr, or the caliphate, you could say, right? So a lot of people jumped ship and joined the winning team at the time. And then the last verse says, exalt him and praise and ask him for forgiveness. Okay. So I'm just going to check if there's any further comments. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, so apparently Abu Sufyan became a great Muslim. Yeah, it's interesting that some of these people, according to the seerah that I listened to from Yasir Qadi, Abu Sufyan to the very end was skeptical of Muhammad. Even after Muhammad won, he still was not totally believing he was a messenger of God. But at that point, he accepted it because I think he had no choice, right? Like at that point, his tribe had lost. They had been surrounded by the Muslim battlefield. They tried to kill the Muslims. So does that mean Islam is true? No, of course not, right? People don't, just because a certain power or force becomes victorious in a certain battle, doesn't mean that their God is true, right? Because Muslims and Hindus have battles all the time. Sometimes Muslims win, sometimes Hindus win. When Muslims win, they'll say, "Oh, Allah is supporting us." If Muslims lose, they'll say Allah is testing us. So it's kind of funny. Weren't the sons of Abu Jahl's husbands of Muhammad's two daughters? Yeah, apparently in the seerah, early on. So Abu Jahl was known as, actually he was known as Abul Hakam, like he was known as, the father of wisdom, right? When he rejected Muhammad, Muhammad started calling him the father of ignorance, Abu Jahl. But he even his daughters were married to Abu Jahl, right? Before he decided to become a prophet by career, right? So it's kind of funny that he flipped like that, right? And yeah, things definitely changed in Islam, right? Okay, so let's do one more. Let's do another surah. And we did Kafirun, Kauthar. Okay, so Masad. Surah Masad. Okay, let's talk about Surah Masad. Surah Masad is interesting that because it's like, again, becoming like a petty person and going down to the level of like such a childish level, right? Like, so what happened here was Abu Lahab, who was the uncle of Muhammad. That's not his name. Abu Lahab means father of flame. That wasn't his name. He was bothering Muhammad. Abu Lahab was bothering Muhammad, and his wife was bothering Muhammad. They apparently used to follow him, and whenever he used to tell people, "I'm the prophet of God and Allah is the one God," he used to go behind him and say, "Don't listen to this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about," right? He's my nephew. On top of it, he's my nephew. So I'm not just saying that because I don't like him. He's my own blood, but he's not the prophet. He's making this up or whatever he used to say, right? Of course, this enraged Muhammad, right? Like, here I am. I'm just trying to do my own thing here. I just want to be a prophet. I just want people to follow me, worship me, give me, 1/5 of the world booty, go to battle and die for me, make me the undisputed leader. Like, is that too much to ask for? I just want to be the undisputed leader of all of mankind. I'm just coming here. I'm just God's prophet. Like, is that such a big problem for you guys? Can't you just listen to me and let me do my thing? Like, come on. Like, am I bothering you guys? I'm just in Mecca. I'm just preaching. I'm not bothering you guys. I mean, later on he did, but like, at the time I just want to be a prophet. Like, come on. Like, Allah's my guy, like he likes me, and I'm just telling people about worshiping one God and to take care of orphans. And when we go into the other short surahs, you'll see there's a lot of surahs about, taking care of orphans and don't bury your daughters and lots of stuff like that, right? And Muhammad's like, I'm just trying to make a living, just like you guys. You guys selling your idols. I'm selling that your idols are shit, and you should listen to me and not your idols. So what the hell? Leave me alone, right? And so he got really mad, and he came up with the surah. Allah came down and said, Tabbat yada Abi Lahab wa tab. Cursed is Abu Lahab, and may the hands of Abu Lahab be ruined. And he's ruined again, right? He said it twice. And then, ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab, right? His wealth will not avail him that which he gained. So now he's saying, yeah, you got money. It's not going to help you, right? So yasla naran dat lahab. He's going to enter the burning flame. So here's an interesting question. Abu Lahab is going to enter hellfire. How can he make such a claim? Doesn't everyone have free will? Doesn't everyone have the ability until they die to repent? Muslims sometimes say this is a miracle of the Quran. Abu Lahab never accepted Islam. If he did, he would have proved the Quran wrong. Well, let me ask you this. Wasn't other verses of the Quran abrogated? Of course they were. Other verses of the Quran were abrogated or removed. According to the hadith, if the hadith is true, there used to be verses of the Quran about stoning adulterers. There used to be verses of the Quran that spoke about suckling, how many suckles you have to make in order for someone to become mahram as related to you. The uncle Beach Price is asking, the one whose feet will be in the hellfire is a different uncle of Muhammad. It's the uncle of Muhammad that actually supported him, Abu Talib. That was Ali's father. So Ali, his son-in-law and his cousin, his father, Abu Talib, is the one that raised Muhammad and is the one that defended Muhammad despite disbelieving in Muhammad. So he disbelieved in Muhammad as a prophet, but he also protected him, defended him, and allowed him to preach his message. So, going back to the story. So this guy was making problems for Muhammad, and his wife was making problems for Muhammad. So Allah came down and saying, I'm going to roast you alive, haha, and your wife too, the one killing the firewood, right? Around her neck is masad, twisted fibers. So apparently she used to put things on the ground and people would step on it, and it would Muhammad would step on it and hurt his feet, supposedly, right? So the response to this was like an internal, like God roasting her and her husband, right? That was the response from Muhammad. Again, if this is from God, why does it seem like Muhammad is responding to personal issues here? Why does it seem like that? If you are God, let's say you are God, let's say Muhammad is your prophet, would you want to be portraying it in such a way that would make people wonder if he was making it up? Like you know what I'm saying? Like if you have, like let's say I have someone that reports to me, and I'm the boss, and let's say I want to look like I'm a fair, impartial boss. But if I keep favoring one guy, and every time he gets in trouble, I go and let's say he doesn't come to work on time, and I go and I save him from that, and I say, I'm going to let you off on this, and everybody sees that I'm actually like doing that. Isn't it going to seem like actually there's something going on there, and I'm actually favoring him? Isn't it going to seem that, especially if you never, like, I don't even exist, and the guy is saying, oh yeah, my boss said I can do this, my boss said I can do that, the big boss of all the universe said this is okay, and the big boss said you guys are all in trouble, all of you guys are going to hell because you didn't listen to me, right? So it makes you, like, God himself is putting his message in question by acting like he's Muhammad's invention, right? Like that's what it seems like, because he again is responding to someone that was hurting Muhammad in his life, and he's acting like as if this is like a human being responding, right? Uh, Calisthenics Wade is saying, how about addressing how this chapter lacks any context? Who is Abu Lahab? What did he do? Yeah, that's a good point. Like the Quran by itself, without any of this tafsir and the Sunni interpretation that I'm giving it, like doesn't even mean anything, right? So this is actually, in a sense, could be seen as an argument against. Uh, this could be seen as an argument against Quranism, because the Quran without the Hadith doesn't have much context, right? Especially if you look at this one, like you don't even know what's going on. Who is this guy? How is he ruined? What's this wealth it talks about? Why is he going to hellfire? What about his wife? What does his wife do? What does she have to do with it, right? And why is this thing around her neck, right? So this is kind of like, you know, questionable. Someone's asking, what created God? Um, I don't believe in God, but I actually think that this is an illogical question, because one of the premises of God is that God always existed, right? So if you take the premise that God always existed, how can you say who created God? Because by definition, he was always existing. So somebody can turn around and say, well, you atheists believe that the universe was made from nothing. And I would say, well, I believe it's quite possible the universe always existed, just like you believe God always existed, right? So if you keep saying there was a God who created a God who created a God, you get infinite regress. And my mind, I can't wrap my head around that. It doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather just assume that if there is a God, he always existed. But I don't actually believe there is a God, and so I actually believe the universe, in some form or other, always existed. Okay, going to the questions. Muslims would say this hadith is da'if. Yeah, so this is kind of a problem with Islam, that even if God, you know, like saved his religion, saved his holy book, the Quran, preserved it, which he didn't, but let's say he didn't preserve the context. He didn't preserve the hadith. He didn't preserve, like, the details around it, right? Or did he? Well, there's a lot of questions that we have about whether, the Muhammad that we know, was he really the Muhammad that we're told about, right? Like, for example, this is actually an interesting point, that when you look at whether Muhammad was from Petra or Mecca, there's some evidence that's given by Dan Gibson that seem to indicate that Muhammad is not who we think he is. He's not a man from what is now Saudi Arabia, Mecca there, because of these interesting points, that Mecca is not found on any historical maps of the world. It doesn't seem to be in the right place for a trade route. It's out of the way, right? Whereas Petra does appear. So this is an alternative, interpretation of history that may be closer to Jordan, and Petra is a place that he pointed out, is where Muhammad was actually from, not where we now think, Muhammad is from. And so we don't actually have a lot of details about Muhammad that we can actually truly verify. And so academics who have gone into Islam have pointed out some of these challenges in making sense out of the official story, right? Why is it that the descriptions in the Quran do not match the current Mecca? For example, the foliage, right? For example, the mountains of Safa and Marwa, right? They're supposed to take days to run back and forth, but now it's just like boop, boop, back and forth in a couple of minutes, right? Uh, Stuff like that, like the one that says, they pass by the remains of Lot in the morning and evening. Well, that's closer to Jordan than to Mecca, right? Why do all the early mosques point towards Petra, right? And when finally at the time of Abdul Malik Marwan, they started to point to actual Mecca, Saudi Arabia, right? And I put a response that Islamic awareness has. So there's some points back and forth that we can go through, and which is quite interesting. There's also a documentary called The Sacred City that he made. There's also a Quranic geography book that you can actually buy that goes through some of these arguments, and it's quite interesting. It goes through, like, basically what the points that I summarized on right here. Um, so yeah, so this is why I think that we can't be totally sure about the details about Muhammad. We can't be totally sure even where he was from, right? And so this is what I'm truly wondering, like how much of what we know about Muhammad do we actually know, right? Like it's hard to know. It's hard to know what we say about Muhammad. How true is it? But we can use it as a way to discuss and dialogue because obviously Muslims believe these things. But if you're looking at it from an academic perspective, it's not. It doesn't make sense, right? And Kroc is saying Patricia Crone also claimed the real birthplace of Islam is somewhere in North Arabia around Jordan. Yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense, right? Foreign word Kai Sara is saying foreign words, unfamiliar Arabic words, and words used with other than the normal meaning, adjectives and verbs. Sorry, I'm missing the context of this comment. Oh yeah, yeah. Mistakes in the Quran. It's talking about mistakes in the Quran. Yeah, there are mistakes in the Quran, but if you tell that to Muslims, they always go back and say, no. The Quran is the definition of Arabic, right? So that's if that's the case, it's unfalsifiable, and we can never prove the Quran wrong. So you can't if you want to say it's a standard of Arabic, then you can't say it's also a miracle because of the language, right? Which is again like a different topic, but not doesn't make a lot of sense, right? If the Quran is a definition of Arabic, then how could it also be a miracle? Like you can pick one or the other, not both, right? You know what I'm saying? Um, and I encourage people to read about the history of Islam, study the academics on it to see that things don't totally make sense, right? Things that were taught about Islam, Muslims are taught, I was taught, they don't add up, right? This is a problem. Um, okay, yeah. Zia Rahman says Abdullah means worshipper of La, or in Urdu it means La Keparagi. Um, yeah, so yeah, worshipper of Allah. I guess in some sense, I'm a worshipper of Allah. I don't know. um, yeah, so that's what that's what I wanted to talk about today. I think we're running out of time, and let's see if there's any more questions. We can go to any more questions, and then we're all good. Okay, give me a second. Okay. What do you think of the Quran's language, Ibrahim? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by the Quran's language? Nathan is saying Muhammad's real name was Qutham, and he was born 4 years after his father died. How is it even possible? Moreover, Muhammad actually means the praised one. Um, I've never heard of Muhammad's real name being Qutham. What's the source for that? Where did you hear about that? Um, I'm not sure where that's coming from. It is interesting that Muhammad's name is not mentioned anywhere in anywhere. It doesn't seem to be mentioned anywhere before Muhammad. So it's like either the name is made up or nobody had that name, like which is kind of weird, right? Which one is it? Like, did nobody have that name, or did was that name or title? It almost seems like a title, Muhammad, right? The Hadith, which came 200 years later, said that Muhammad is actually, the Quran mentions Muhammad by name once, right? Muhammad is not the father of any of you, but the question is, was this made up after the fact, right? We truly don't know, right? We don't know for sure if this is the case, whether Muhammad was made up the name, because again, like a lot of history is not it's not clear what exactly happened in history, right? I'd love to have the source for people saying his name was Abu Khatam, named after his uncle's death. I've never heard about that. Okay. Do you think in today's world, especially in the West, that it is more about Muslim identity rather than Islam? Yeah, I think a lot of it is about Muslim identity. Um, it's in general, like whatever religion you follow, it does become a big part of your identity. And so for many people in the West, especially as a minority, it's definitely yeah, I would say it's definitely an identity thing for them. Many Muslims are not practicing. They don't pray 5 times a day. They might even do things like drinking alcohol, yet they still consider themselves Muslims. They still believe in a hereafter. But the funny thing is they do all these things, right, which is strange. So how is that the case that they're able to how do they reconcile that? Because if you truly believe in God, how is it that you can also, and you believe there's a hereafter, and you believe all of this, day of judgment or whatever, then how is it that you're doing all these things which are bad things, right? And I don't know how Muslims reconcile it. Maybe they say God is merciful, um, or whatever. But I don't know. I'm not sure, right? But yeah, that's what it is. So I have to wrap this up now. Thank you guys for joining me for this live chat and for my reading of Quranic verses and from this discussion. I hope to try to do this at least once a week, go through some of the other verses in the Quran and some of the history and context and just reflect upon it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye.